Africa, a continent brimming with diverse cultures and rich histories, has long celebrated a spectrum of gender identities and sexual orientations. Before the arrival of European colonizers, many African societies embraced fluidity in gender and sexuality, recognizing it as a natural part of the human experience. These societies often integrated individuals who identified outside of heteronormative norms into their social fabric, valuing their contributions and perspectives. This essay delves into the pre-colonial history of LGBTQI communities in Africa, exploring their indigenous practices, spiritual roles, and the impact of colonialism on their traditions. It is crucial to understand that pre-colonial Africa was not a utopia free from prejudice. However, many societies exhibited a remarkable degree of acceptance and integration when it came to gender and sexual diversity. This acceptance stemmed from a worldview that recognized the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of community. In these societies, individuals were not defined solely by their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather by their contributions to the collective well-being. Pre-colonial Africa was home to a wide array of gender identities and sexual orientations, each with its own unique set of customs and beliefs. These identities were not seen as aberrations, but rather as integral parts of the social fabric. For instance, among the Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria, individuals who identified as male at birth but exhibited feminine characteristics were recognized as female men and held respected positions within society. Similarly, the Banyoro people of Uganda recognized a third gender category known as Mukusa, who were assigned male at birth but lived as women. Mukusa often held positions of power and influence, serving as advisors to kings and chiefs. These examples highlight the fluidity of gender identity in many pre-colonial African societies and the acceptance that often accompanied it. The recognition of diverse sexual orientations was also prevalent in many African cultures. Among the San people of southern Africa, for example, same-sex relationships were accepted as a natural part of life. Similarly, the Azande people of Central Africa had a tradition of boy wives, where young men would enter into temporary marriages with older warriors. These relationships were not seen as taboo, but rather as an accepted part of the social order. It is important to note that the specific expressions of gender and sexuality varied widely across the African continent. However, the common thread that ran through many of these cultures was a recognition of the diversity of human experience and a willingness to embrace those who fell outside of rigid binary categories. This acceptance was rooted in a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all life and the belief that every individual had a valuable role to play in society. In many pre-colonial African societies, individuals who identified outside of heteronormative norms were not only accepted, but also revered for their unique spiritual gifts. They often held important roles within their communities, serving as healers, diviners, and intermediaries between the physical and spiritual realms. Their perceived ability to transcend traditional gender boundaries gave them a special status and allowed them to access knowledge and power that were often inaccessible to others. For example, among the Yoruba people of West Africa, individuals known as Iya Nimi, or mothers who have sons, were often transgender women who played significant roles in religious ceremonies. They were believed to possess the power to communicate with the Orishas, the deities of the Yoruba pantheon. Similarly, the Dahomey Amazons, an all-female military regiment in the Kingdom of Dahomey, present-day Benin, included women who identified as men and were highly respected for their martial prowess and spiritual power. The sacred roles occupied by LGBTQI individuals in many African societies highlight the deep connection between gender diversity, spirituality, and traditional belief systems. These individuals were not seen as separate from the spiritual realm, but rather as integral parts of it. Their unique identities were seen as gifts that allowed them to bridge the gap between the human and the divine. The arrival of colonialism and the spread of Christianity and Islam had a profound impact on these traditional beliefs. European missionaries and colonial administrators often viewed indigenous African spiritual practices as primitive and barbaric. They sought to suppress these practices and replace them with their own religious doctrines, which often condemned homosexuality and other forms of gender nonconformity. This suppression led to the decline of many traditional roles held by LGBTQI individuals and contributed to their marginalization within their communities. The oral traditions of many African cultures are replete with myths and legends that reflect the acceptance and integration of LGBTQI individuals into society. These stories, passed down through generations, provide valuable insights into the values and beliefs of pre-colonial African societies and challenge the notion that homosexuality and gender nonconformity are recent imports from the West. One such legend from the Zulu people of South Africa tells the story of King Shaka, a renowned warrior and leader who is said to have had a close relationship with one of his male warriors. The legend suggests that same-sex relationships were not uncommon within the Zulu military and were even seen as a mark of honor and loyalty. Another example comes from the Yoruba people, whose mythology includes the Orisha Oshun, a deity associated with love, beauty, and fertility. Oshun is often depicted as androgynous or gender fluid, and her stories celebrate love and desire in all its forms, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. These myths and legends serve as a testament to the long-standing presence of LGBTQI individuals in African societies and the acceptance they often experienced. They provide a glimpse into a time when gender and sexuality were not seen as rigid categories, but rather as fluid aspects of the human experience. The suppression of these oral traditions during the colonial era resulted in the loss of valuable cultural knowledge and contributed to the erasure of LGBTQI histories in Africa. However, in recent years, there has been a growing movement to reclaim and preserve these stories, recognizing their importance in challenging colonial narratives and affirming the identities of LGBTQI individuals.